everyone. I'll note that we do have a quorum, and I'll call the February the 27th, 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. We have Brad Simpson from Wythe Presbyterian Church here to do our invocation. I would like everybody to stand and remain standing for our pledge.
Let us pray. Lord, we are thankful for this day, a day to serve, a day to glorify you, a day to make our community a better place to live for all. I pray a prayer of blessing this morning on our Board of Supervisors, and I pray that as they make decisions, that they would listen to each other, and come to consensus as to what is best for our community. Help them to be guided, Lord, by the principles of love, compassion, hospitality, and the good for all people. Help them to know that they are appreciated and that we as their community thank them. Help them also to remember that you have blessed them and that you are here with them in this meeting. Thank you for our community, a place that abounds with hospitality and love, and especially welcome to those who travel through this area. We pray this and all of our prayers in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, welcome everyone this morning. We'll move into our agenda with citizens' time. Ms. Myers.
Martha, you want to start? I just brought you a few photographs I thought you'd all like to see. They're really, really nice. These were done, if you just want to keep going through them, last year by Mike Thomas from Blue Sky Realty. As just to be nice, I asked him to go out there and do some photography. This is the Royal Retreat Fairgrounds, and he did some of the lake and so on, and they're really pretty. So I thought you guys would enjoy them.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. I know that's everyone that was signed up, but I know some people has come in after we started. Does anybody else would like to speak during citizens' time? Hearing none, I'll close citizens' time, move on into our agenda, payment of invoices. I'll entertain a motion to pay the invoices.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
To have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to pay the invoices. Is there any invoice any board member would like to pull out or have any questions about any invoices? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Vaught?
Aye. 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 Yeah.
And the chair votes aye. Next item on the agenda is the February 13th, 2018 minutes. Entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any corrections or changes need to be made to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next item is our Wythe County Fiscal Year 17 Audit Report. We have Corbin Stone here. Mr. Stone, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. Thanks for having me. I passed around a little handout, and I'll kind of walk you through that. I'll tell you the audit went well. We did have some, under government auditing standards, we had a few findings in the back of the audit report. If we come in and recommend audit adjustments to your financial statements, then we put a finding in the back of the report saying we had to recommend some audit adjustments. Overall, the county did extremely well. Any of our audit adjustments dealt with recognizing payables or receivables, nothing to do with cash or anything like that. Overall, the county did extremely well. When you look at an audit report that's, I guess we're up to 112, 113 pages now, you can understand we're probably going to have some adjustments. Just about everywhere we go, we have adjustments. But the county is learning every year. They're doing a better job of identifying those adjustments before we show up. And then we did have some comments on just segregation of duties issues. which you don't want the same person keeping the books. It's maybe collecting cash, that sort of thing. I think the other issue in the back of the report dealt with just coming up with a good reconciliation process in your new accounting system for your tax collections. What we want to see is that you post an original tax assessment when that comes from the commissioner. We want to add supplemental assessments to that, subtract off exonerations of taxes, then subtract off the ending receivable balance, and that should be what you collect for the year. So we want to get a running total of your delinquent balances in your accounting system so we can make sure collections reconcile back to those delinquent balances. But like I said, overall, we are very pleased with the audit. You did receive what we call an unqualified or unmodified opinion, meaning that we think the financial statements are correct, are materially correct. If you flip to page 1 of the handout, the numbers are kind of small. I apologize for that. But I want to give you some historical picture of where fund balance has been and where it's going, or where it is today. On that first page, you can see the fund balance for the general fund and the capital projects fund. 2017, those funds combined ended the year with $45,284,000 in total fund balance. If you look at the general fund breakdown, and those capital projects funds are committed to capital projects, so you can't pull that money out and just use it for whatever you like. And even portions of the general fund balance are committed to the police activity fund, that sort of thing is merged in there. So you can't just pull it out and use it for whatever you like. But you can see, if you look at the yellow line, the unrestricted funds in the general fund from 2008 to 2017, we've had pretty good growth there. And you ended the year 2017 with $36 million in your general fund balance, which is a healthy fund balance. That's healthier than what we're seeing in a lot of places in the southwestern part of the state, primarily because everybody's losing population, and you're losing the tax base, and it's kind of hard to keep that general fund balance up when that's occurring. Long-term debt for the governmental funds at the end of the year, $37,618,000, down a little bit from the prior year. I do think that's going to go up a little bit because you'd only drawn about $50,000 on that $5 million loan for the new ag center. So that you're going to pull that down, and this balance should go up next year. You may have some other debt issuances that are going to drive it up as well. Enterprise fund net position ended the year with $30,944,000. When we talk about net position, we're looking at your water and sewer system in total. So that includes the value or the depreciated value of water and sewer lines that are in the ground. You're not going to dig them up and sell them, so just keep that in mind. It's not $30 million of cash that you have to spend. Long-term debt for enterprise funds, $25,365,000. Total debt for the county, $62 million, or just under $63 million at the end of the year. On a per capita basis, that's $2,193. I will let you know when we're looking at total debt here, we're excluding your pension liabilities. You do have a pension liability at VRS. The funds they have up there right now are not enough to meet the present value of your future pension liabilities. That compares to a state average back in 2010. The state averages now include those pension liabilities, but the state average back in 2010, debt per capita unweighted, was $2,078. So right in line with what it was statewide back in 2010. And I expect that number has actually gone up. You do have a reserve calculation down at the bottom. Basically, you have a debt reserve requirement in one of your bonds that says you've got to keep 40% of your total outstanding general obligation debt in cash. So that calculation comes to just under $25 million at the end of the year. Your general fund cash balances were $36 million, so you've met that obligation. But that one criteria, I guess, in one bond is really going to dictate your minimum fund balance or minimum cash balance in the general fund. The next page, I'm just graphing this stuff out for you on page 2. Fund balance and debt going from 2008 to 2017. The closer those two things are together, the better off you are. So if you used all your unrestricted funds right now to pay off your governmental debt, that wouldn't include water and sewer, you could almost pay off all your debt. So fund balance unrestricted funds have risen to that level. The next page just shows net position for the water and sewer fund going back to 2008. You can see you kind of got up above $30 million in 2014 in net position, and it's kind of just remained constant there. It's not growing, it's not shrinking. The next page are your revenue sources, really for the general fund and the capital projects fund. I combined them here. What you can derive from this pretty pretty quickly is that general property taxes, any increases you have in expenditures are being covered by increases in general property taxes. The second line down, your other local taxes, meals tax, that sort of thing. You can see back in 2006, it was just over $6 million. In 2017, it's probably about $6.5, $6.6 million. So not a tremendous amount of growth in this look-back period, going all the way back to 2016. You come down to that green line, that's kind of the third line down, excuse me. That's aid from the Commonwealth, taxes and shared expenses, flat. I mean, all the way back to 2006, 2017, just completely flat. The next line, the purple line, I guess, is going to be your Commonwealth aid, grant aid, if you will. So that includes any sort of capital allocation they've given to you for a project. And you can see it kind of bounces around a little bit. But again, that's all going to be earmarked for a specific purpose. So it's not free money. You can't just use it for whatever you like. But really the telltale sign of this graph, and we're seeing it pretty much everywhere, it's that there's a greater reliance on local tax dollars, local property taxes, compared to state aid, other local taxes, just about everything else. And I don't expect that trend to change. I expect in the future, as your expenses go up, the revenue that's going to be used to cover those expenses is going to have to come from local property taxes. The next page are just your original tax assessments by fiscal year. And yours are kind of all over the place. Most places, these things are just kind of flat line or kind of gradually going up. Yours are just kind of all over the place. I will tell you that real estate, we have to take 1/10 of the assessed value to get it on the graph. Otherwise, your real estate assessments are way up here, and all the other lines are tiny lines that kind of run together at the bottom. But you can see that real estate line, which is kind of the second line down. It's kind of a bluish color there with diamonds in it. You can see, I guess you had a reassessment back in 2007, 2008, and since that reassessment, it's been a slight upward tick in your real estate assessments. Personal property, looks like it went up until 2016. It came down a little bit in 2017. What we're hearing is that the car market's kind of peaked, so personal property, we expect that to flatten out. We don't expect to see a whole lot of growth going forward. I think we had record sales in 2017, and they're expecting that to decrease in 2018. The next line down, the Public Service Corporation has had a steady growth since 2005. Passing or getting really right in line with your personal property assessments. And then machinery and tools, and it's not unusual to see machinery and tools spike up and then come down as corporations are allowed, essentially get a depreciation deduction for the machinery and tools they put in service. The next page, I'm just graphing out the revenue sources for the school board. And you can see in 2017, the state aid is actually below the peak, which occurred back in 2009. So they had a pretty good ramp up in state aid up until 2009. The Great Recession hit, it dropped down, and we really haven't recovered fully from that yet. Part of that could be driven if you've got a declining school population. Part of that not reaching those levels again can be driven by the declining school population. You can see the third line down, federal aid spiked up to kind of take the place of that missing state aid in 2010, and now that has since tapered back off. So federal aid is actually lower than it was. Federal aid in 2017 is actually lower than it was back in 2006. And the middle line, that's local aid. That's contributions from the local government. And you can see your aid has picked up. So where the other two have fallen off, you guys have picked up to cover the deficit there. The next two pages are just our management comments for the year. Statement of economic interest, we just want to make sure everybody files those forms by the statutory deadline and completely fills them out. So I think we had one person that didn't file that form by the deadline. I can't remember who it is. I'm not going to call anybody out. But the state asked us to check that. If we see even one person hasn't filed it by the deadline or they haven't completed the form, we have to report it to you in our management letter. Other post-employment benefit, actuarial valuation. The county and school boards, we call it the OPEB valuation. It's an estimate of your future liabilities for post-employment benefits you provide employees. Wasn't completed until December 2017. We'd like to get that in September so we can get the audit report completed by the end of November and off to the state. So we're just reminding you here to try to get that updated a little earlier this year from your actuary. And it's not necessarily your fault. The actuaries are booked. So they're having a hard time getting these reports completed in a timely manner. Next comment was just Public Deposit Act comment. Basically, all your funds need to be listed with the state treasurer as public deposit because that affords you additional protection in the rare instance of bank failure. So if we have a bank failure, personal funds are secured up to $250,000. Local government funds, if they're in this program, are secured to whatever you have in there. So there's no risk of loss. So we will make sure that you contact the bank and make sure they've properly reported all your accounts to the state treasurer. Lack of segregation of duties, that was mentioned in the audit report, and that's really the remaining comments. It's just not having enough people in place or controls in place. Like I said, we want the person that's writing the accounts payable check, or let's say taking in cash, we don't want that person also keeping the books. So if you're in the treasurer's office and you're closing out a drawer every day, but you're also posting journal entries to the books, we want to have some segregation of duties there. Because that person could theoretically run a void through the books and take cash home. Not saying that happened, but we would like to have a segregation of duties. And the last couple pages are what we call our letter to those charged with governance. Basically, if we come in to do an audit and your folks are cantankerous, is probably a good word, they don't want to work with us, we're going to report it to you in this letter. We're also going to tell you about the significant estimates in the financial statements, any issues we had during the audit. You guys get the boilerplate letter. We didn't have any problems. When we came in to do the audit here at the school board at Social Services, when we asked you folks for something, they provided it right away. We didn't have any issues. So no real need to go through that letter, but we have to provide it to you regardless. So, and I'll kind of went over a lot of information in a hurry there, so I'll try to.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Stone? Mr. Stone, I thank you and thank Robertson, Farmer, and Cox for a job well done, and we thank you for all the work you do for the county.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. I'll just tell you before I leave, my contact information is down there at the bottom on the presentation. We work for the board of supervisors. If you have any questions for me or want me to look into anything, don't hesitate to call me or email.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this recent story about the new state auditing process that counties are rated. I read it on times that 16 is a number that no. If you use that same method, about where would Wythe County be?
You guys are pretty healthy. I haven't looked at your number. We've got a number back at the office, and we can look at it over a 3-year period. And I can email the county administrator and let him know where you stand. But I think you guys are pretty healthy. You're not below 6. If you're below 16, there's something wrong with the model. So you guys are in pretty good shape. And that model, they're still refining that, actually. We've had talks with the state auditor, and actually we're supposed to go up and kind of meet with them to try to look at how we can improve that model a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Thanks.
Okay, we move right on into our old business, and we have appointments. Mr. Hill, you have a question for Mr. Bear?
We have an appointment need on the rec committee. Is there any reason, or is there a reason that someone that works with the rec committee, like as a referee, can they not be on it, or can they be on it?
Do not see any restrictions on that, no.
Okay, I'll take that back, probably.
Okay. We have the New River Mount Rogers Workforce Development Consortium. It's a business rep. Mr. Bear, if you had any.
Still trying to locate, work with I may end up reaching out to the chamber and seeing if they have any recommendations as well for that one, to go on that.
Okay.
I don't have any recommendations at this time.
Okay. I'm going to deviate in the agenda just a little bit. We're going into reports, and I'm going to have Sheriff Dunnigan. We'll move him up first. Morning, Sheriff.
I don't have a lot for you. I know that I checked the trash report before we came up. We picked up about 12,000 pounds of trash from February 1 to now, so you got a couple more days left in February. And that program's still going good. We get a lot of comments on it. So, and we talked to Stephen the other day. He had a question about picking up trash in the town, but not like the housing areas, but like Route 11 and Route 90 down around Rural Retreat. So I think we're probably down there working on that today.
Major Klein sent us a email on Foster Falls Road of how many tires and trash they picked up down there. And even at the park and ride, they had 19 bags of trash at the park and ride. That's ridiculous. But the amount of tires they found on one dump site on Foster Falls Road was, I couldn't believe that there's that many tires, 300 and some tires in one place.
Right. And a lot of the exits on the I-81, they can spend literally days picking up those exits. They spend weeks picking up those exits. And by the time they get finished, they can go back and start again. I mean, that's how much trash is getting thrown
Well,
off
don't
on the
VDOT
interstate.
maintenance supposed to pick up on the exits, interstate and exits? Maybe we need to
They are, but
ask Mr. Russell to, I mean, that's taking up our time that we can be cleaning up
County roads.
secondary roads, county roads.
And if you got any roads, just drop me an email or give me a call, and we'll relay them on to Erickson, and he'll get it done for you. Second thing I wanted to bring to your attention is some time back, we told you about a $10,000 grant to get the Narcan, the stuff that will revive opiate DOA. And we had a $44,000 grant from Wythe Bland for defibrillators. All the Narcan is in, all the defibrillators are in. We've trained about half the department on the use of that stuff, and yesterday, it's already in their cars. We're training the other half today, and that'll be in their cars tonight. And on behalf of myself and all the members of the Wythe County Sheriff's Office, we appreciate the new radios you bought us. They're working good. We've only got the portables in so far, but we expect the in-car units to start arriving. We thought they'd be here by now. They shipped out of California early last week. So thank you for those radios. That's all
Thank
I
you,
have
Sheriff.
unless you got some questions.
Does anybody have any questions for the sheriff?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, moving back into our regular agenda, Commissioner of Revenue, Faye.
I don't have any reports this time unless somebody has a question.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Barker? Thank you, Faye. Ms. Gwynn?
Good morning. Welcome, Ms. Lawson. I haven't gotten to join you for a meeting yet, but glad to have you. Okay, your January financial report. In the consolidated account, the county has a balance of $68,708,138, and of that, in the general fund is a balance of $43,018,488. Tax collections are continuing to go well. A lot of folks, as I've pointed out in previous meetings, are receiving their income tax returns. They're coming in and paying. We will be mailing out delinquent notices for March, or excuse me, not March 1st, April 1st, getting my months mixed up. So within the next 30 days, we'll be sending those out. Trying to, work with people as best we can. I have started the set-off debt program. I have had a few hits. I'm proud to say most of the people that I have gotten claims on for their state tax return are people that owe us taxes from 10-plus years. So that's going to help clean some of that up off of the books as well. But if we can finish out the tax season, I hope we can get into an aggressive tax collection for a couple of months as far as issuing warrants in debt. There's a program that I want to subscribe to that will allow us to do better skip tracing to locate folks, see where they are, get up-to-date addresses, and try to start pursuing those collections. Going back to the last meeting, Mr. Hale, or the last day meeting, excuse me, the answer to your question was in front of all of us, and we weren't paying attention at the time. So you had asked what our outstanding tax collections were. In your financial report, the last 2 pages of the treasurer's report outlines what what our outstanding collections are. All of those accounts are deferred revenue accounts, and the ending account balance on all of those is what is outstanding for that particular year. So in your current January report, for example, with real estate tax, and this is going to be principal, this will not be penalty and interest at this point, is $1.9 million. Just a little over that. So personal property, mobile homes, machine and tools, all of that combines together. But right now, we have a little over $2.6 million that's outstanding throughout the years that are still on the books. But that report, it's kind of small print, so you don't have to have a magnifying glass to read it because so much has to get fit in on those 2 pages. But that'll give you an idea of where we are as far as our outstanding amounts, which each year, some of those tax years write off. We can only technically collect 20 years of real estate, personal property 5 years. So there are some years that are still there on the books just because of a delay in us kind of going through our processes over the past year. But that's the answer to your question from the last meeting. That when I got back to the office, I realized I knew the answer, but I was in a hurry to get back for training session that we had. So I just it went past me. So anyway, but anyone have any questions on anything that I haven't covered or you would like for me to cover?
That's what we talked about last time, was some aggressive program to go after that 1.7
Right.
million. That's real money that we survived without it coming in, and that's part of that revenue stream
Right.
that we need to collect the tax.
And a lot of these balances that are showing here are because we have judgments against those taxpayers, but some don't care that they have a judgment against them and others do. As soon as they get that, what we do, when we file those, we mail a copy. We have to mail a copy to the taxpayer. Sometimes that mailed copy gets their attention. Sometimes that uniformed officer showing up at their door gets their attention, and other times they don't care because everybody else is in line in front of us. So, just trying to do a little bit more with those. I think the income tax return, the set-off debt program is very good because a lot of these folks, they get income tax refunds. And my average so far on the claims that I've had has been about $550 per person. So that's a nice chunk of money coming in. So we're trying to get there. I think this summer we'll better be able to breathe a little bit and pursue things that we haven't gotten to pursue. So, anything else?
Any more questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Gwynn. Faye, I do have one question. Our mills and occupancy tax, it had a tremendous increase from December to January. What was that contributed to?
A lot of that was we were behind on mail.
Oh.
So mail was sitting in our office. We didn't get to it till the first week of January, so a lot of folks had mailed their lodging tax payments in. And so for us on lodging, that was on our side for us. Meals, I'm not sure what their mail was like as far as coming in, but lodging was significantly higher in January because of our mail situation.
Okay.
I had the 2 months together, took the difference over the 2 months of last year, and it's about a 3.5% increase. So the spike is just where it didn't get posted in December and got posted in January.
Moving on, we have the Water Committee.
The Water Committee met on February 20, 2018, makes the following recommendations. seek funding sources in order to proceed with the creek crossing option at the Max Meadows Bridge crossing site. Staff has contacted the VDH, and the project is eligible to receive VRLF loan grant funds. The VDH district engineer has indicated that the PER requirements could likely be waived since it's a replacement project.
Okay, coming from committee, it doesn't need a second. Any questions, comments, explanations? Anybody like to have any other explanation? This is a crossing in Max Meadows that's hanging under the bridge. It's about ready to fall off the bridge.
It's a little more expensive to go under the creek than it is to go across the bridge, but we feel like you don't have to replace it.
Okay.
Under the creek,
A one-time fix, hopefully.
hopefully.
And the VRLF is Virginia Revolving Loan Fund. Don't have information yet on what percent might be grant, what percent may be loan, but it was very positive, and we did receive that information on it, and also the waiving of the PER would save additional costs with that. So we've got to find the funding before we move forward with this, but we just want to make certain this is the route, and that's the recommendation of the committee, is to go ahead, look at getting off the bridge and finding funding sources.
Okay, no more questions or comments. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next item.
Approval of writing off the account balance of $4,184.28 for the, I'll apologize for this one before I try to say it, Gosis account? Gosis, okay.
Mr. Barr, you want to explain a little bit on this?
I'll let the county attorney explain on this.
Okay.
Mr. Gogos filed a bankruptcy case. He had some real estate. That's Tasso's who it is. He ran the seafood place here in town for a long time. He owed some property taxes individually, and he owned a house in Max Meadows. He owned a house in Max Meadows with his wife. So that property was jointly owned. The bankruptcy court sold his house in Max Meadows because it was equity. When the judgment obtained by the county was only against Tasso individually, so that judgment did not attach to the joint house. So when the bankruptcy court sold the joint house, they did not have to pay the individual debt. That's why the county was collecting the money from that. The other building he owned in town, there was no equity in that. The bank ended up closing on that building at some point. The money owed still remained. So that's the reason for the write-off. The judgment did not attach, essentially unsecured.
Okay. With no other questions or comments, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horning? And the chair votes aye. Next item.
Approval of writing off penalties and interest totaling $2,540.16 for account number 103607 and $2,540.16 for account number 103608. The owner has agreed to pay the sewer connection and capacity fee for the new accounts.
Okay, would you like to summarize this?
Yeah, basically you have a situation where the owner of the property had two renters. The two renters have been paying the monthly bill or monthly non-user fee to go with it. However, the original billing for the water, for the sewer capacity and sewer connection fee of $1,000 had never been paid, and all this penalty and interest had gone against it. As they were proceeding and trying to move forward and collecting this, the owner of the actual property came forward and had never been advised of this. The renters have been the one that had come forward and connected to it. They have indicated, yes, they're willing to pay those fees. They never were given those mailings, whatever, at the beginning. So what we're doing is just writing off the penalty and interest that they were never advised of. And they're actually going to pay the capacity fee and the sewer connection fee, which is what they indicated they would have paid had they been notified of it. The renters are paying the fee. This will bring it all up and puts it in compliance with everything.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next item.
Approval of a leak adjustment in the amount of $536.62 for the Baker's Chapel water account.
Does anybody have any questions? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next item.
Fire hydrants. Per Mr. Hill's request, Mr. Chris made a presentation on the status of the fire hydrants in the county. The presentation included a summary of fire hydrants, flow testing and maintenance requirements, and costs associated with each, and detailed list of fire hydrants out of service. The committee instructed staff to draft a request for proposals to prepare a system hydraulic evaluation which would identify available flows at all fire hydrants in this fire water system.
Okay, the income from committee, it doesn't need a second. Any questions?
Question.
Yes.
What type of timeline are we talking about that? Because, I believe Mr. Hill made a good argument that this is a safety issue.
I have a question also. Gene, what did you just say? Does it mean you're gonna hire somebody to study the problem?
No, it means we're gonna hire somebody to evaluate and tell us how to fix it, right?
Well, basically what you've got, the first thing on the hydraulic analysis of it is in order to do the hydraulic analysis with the 2 employees out there doing everything throughout the entire system would take, and Mr. Chris presented the numbers, would take several months to go through and do that. The other opportunity is similar to what's been done on the new water line project, taking and doing the hydraulic evaluation of what the rate would be, what's available in those areas, and then having that chart and show which ones are 1,000 gallons a minute or 500 gallons a minute or whatever. And then that would provide the information that could be used should we go back and decide to color code the tops of the hydrants to the right flow pressures or work with the fire departments for color coding them for the proper flow test.
Which is an NFPA rule that the fire department has some reasonable belief of how much water is there when they pull up for an emergency.
So what
But this is it a study or are we gonna fix the problem?
No, this is not a study, this is an actual analysis of the system to provide us those rates at a much cheaper cost than going out individually and having staff, two people at each at the hydrant, recording the pressure at each hydrant, recording the residual pressure, all of that. This is a much more economical opportunity to come forward and resolve this.
Get through to it here.
Yeah.
Is this an engineering study that says there should be that much pressure there? Without somebody doing a flow test, you don't know. It's just math.
Well, the engineering study will give you exactly what you're talking about. Yes, it is math and pressure and the hydraulics of it. Now, there may be some that show low on the areas, and then you can take people out there and individually test those areas. But you would need to test the areas that have obviously the high capacity that we're looking at.
It's not actually going out and testing each hydrant.
Right.
Well, if you did a math evaluation, which is, I think, what you just explained, wouldn't it be a real audit, since we're talking audits, that's the word, that you check 10% of them to see if whether it's accurate or not? Math will lie, and liars will use math. But if you don't do some physical testing, it's only as reliable as the math. We don't know whether we got that water there or not. It could be there, but is a valve functioning over here, or is it functioning over there? The math's not going to tell you that, is it? Without a
But
physical test.
that's in every situation. And the valve's off over here, it doesn't matter whether you humanly test it or not. When that actuality happens, that changes. I guess the proposal was, what is proposed is to get the evaluation for the entire system out there, except the area that's already been done, and have that available. Are you recommending add in a 10% actual study by the individuals. To do that, we can go back and revise that PE or that evaluation cost for them, or we can do this study, get the results, and then we can go out and check 10% of them.
Well, we got 400 and some hydrants.
530 something.
Okay, 530 some, the new line.
Yeah.
Got that, but, so could our staff not find time to check 50 of them?
Yes, but I think the best thing to do would be check those 50 in the areas of where you're showing your low flows or possible concerns in the process.
Again, we're relying on math instead of physics. One last question, did that report have any idea, because I know we bought software, how many hydrants are not in service today?
There were, I believe, was 10, I don't remember if it was, yeah.
There were 10 that need to be removed. It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, but the report indicated those that needed repair, those that, there were a few that needed to absolutely be removed in the process.
And then some that
Yeah.
needed to be replaced.
And they had that entire list.
But it wasn't that many.
No.
No,
Well, if it's
not
10,
considering there's 500 out there.
But also,
But I mean, you're right, I mean, if there's a fire hydrant sitting there and it don't work, and you pull up a fire truck and hook to it, it don't matter whether all the other 500 work or not, that's the one you need.
That's the one you need.
That's the one you were depending on, and you're right, I mean, we need to have them either marked that they're not operational, or they need to be taken out of the ground or something.
at the present
Which I
time,
think they do, Mark.
we're down 2 operators now, as it is.
Yeah.
And, okay, any more questions? Okay, hear none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny? And the chair votes aye. Okay, next item, Budget Committee.
Wait a minute, let's finish.
Oh, have we got one? Okay, sorry about that, Jim.
Collins Tank. Per Mr. Hill's request, Mr. Chris made a presentation regarding the Collins Tank operation and how it relates to overall system reliability. The committee instructed staff to request proposals for the short-term engineering service providers to review alternatives as it relates to the tank and the overall system reliability on the north side of the I-81, I-77 corridor.
Okay, come from committee, it doesn't need a second. Any questions?
Really here for more informational purposes of
Oh,
what's going on
okay.
if we want, but just want to include, because it was specifically mentioned in the last meeting of what they were doing. I did speak to Mr. Hale a little bit about this yesterday, about what's been done there. But make certain we're looking at the long-range plans as well as the short-range plans for addressing the water concerns on that area. I'd be glad to answer any questions anybody has on it.
Well, that valve system and tank is critical today to being able to pump water both ways, right?
It is critical to providing water on the north side of interstate should there be a problem with what's coming from the New River Regional Water Authority. We had to use water from the Grants Fork side, or from the Max Meadows side.
That's another well.
Yeah, we had to use it from the Max Meadows well. That's the only really critical aspect of it now. Other than that, no.
Well, my question purely engineering is, can it be put on a valve system that's telemetric, that if something goes wrong, that computer says, we need water going the other way, and that you can control that valve without somebody going and finding that valve and opening it? And I know that capacity is there. Is that what we're looking at?
Well, not immediately on this study. That is what Mr. Long talked about last time, is we are continuing adding the SCADA telemetry system throughout the system as a whole. That is being worked on in the process. What we're looking at here is just determining the alternatives and the variables for what's the best use of that tank and servicing the northern part of the 8177 corridor all the way out to exit 86.
I guess fuel list management, I think that tank has always been a detriment to economic development because it looks like we're broke and can't paint the most visual water tank. And if it's leaking, could that become priority with Mr. Vaughn's study instead of two things being studied independently? Can they be brought together?
I mean, all of it ties in together, yes. It's two separate studies of what's being looked at in the process. But, yes. And it has been actively been pursued, has actually been worked on what to do.
We really need another connection under the interstate.
Yeah.
Besides that one. That's
where the tank is crucial, is because we've only got one line that goes under the interstate. If something happens to it, then we've got to rely on what water's in that tank. So this study, the way I understand it, basically this study is to figure out whether we take that tank down, put a new one up, or if we can repair that tank, or what we need to do with it.
or get rid of it altogether.
What does that tank do if something happens to the line from the river? That's not much water.
Right.
It may not be much, but it's some. If you ain't got the tank, it's none.
You got that in the well.
You've got the wells.
Basically, you've got the one crossover from 81, from south of 81 to north of 81. And what he's saying is something happens there, Max Meadows and the Graham's Forge area would be run off of the Max Meadows tank or Max Meadows well until you got that repaired.
You do have an 8-inch line on the Lee Highway side at exit 77, is that correct?
Yes.
State Police Headquarters,
Yes.
that area. So how far are they from connecting? Because then you would have two crossovers.
That's what this is to study, is where you put the second crossover in.
Well, it's already in.
No, there's
You've
only
got
one.
water on the north side of 81.
Yeah, but it comes
Yes.
from Fort Chiswell.
Yes, but the
You've got water on
crossover,
both sides, but you don't have a line going under the interstate to connect it. You've got one line that connects the two sides, but you don't have more than.
near Lots Gap Road is where the water crosses under the interstate and goes to the north side of the interstate.
That goes to the main
And then
line.
it runs to the state police headquarters, and then it runs out the other direction.
But I thought we had a crossing at state police headquarters.
No.
Well, how do we get water on that side?
From that
On the state
crossover,
police headquarters?
Yeah.
From underneath Lots Gap Road, going out that direction.
it goes south and north. It's tees into that line. Okay, moving right along, Budget Committee report.
The Budget Committee met on February 22nd, 2018, and made the following recommendations. Number one, an amendment and appropriation in the amount of $2,000 to 3506-443020. These funds are funds from Daypro for maintenance they no longer provide.
Okay, again, come from committee, it doesn't need a second. Any questions? Hear none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Ball?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next item.
An amendment and appropriation in the amount of $2,000 to 3506-457703. These funds are funds received from a PSAP grant.
Okay, again, come from committee, it doesn't need a second. Any questions? Hear none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Next item.
Number three is approval and addendum of addendum A and B to the Spillman Technologies purchase and license agreement.
Okay,
again, come from committee, it doesn't need a second. Mr. Bauer, you want to summarize?
Yeah, basically, there's two addendums that are here. If y'all remember, we executed an agreement last year with Spillman Technologies that involves the centralized dispatch center, involves the sheriff's office, and also involves the town of Wythe, town of Little Tree. The first addendum, A, that you've got is basically This loan agreement had several modules that we were purchasing and everything else. Addendum A removes the equipment maintenance, or provides the equipment maintenance module in exchange for the offender tracking module. There is no cost change, but this is just the paperwork to bring it into compliance or to bring the contract up to date with what actually is happening on it. The addendum B has some financial thing to go with it. They are surrendering the license for the advisor interface and the response plan module, which will result in a credit of $12,885. In exchange for that, we'll be purchasing an ESRI, the ArcGIS system interface agreement, and then also a part that will be applied towards an additional Spielman module that has been purchased. And that module is mobile arrest form license that has been added. So it's just updating the Spielman contract for these two items.
Okay.
Darlene has been working with the sheriff's office and the regional group on the dispatch on these addendums and changes.
Okay, any more questions? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Next item.
Number 4 is approval of a transfer of $15,886.41 from the Speedwell Fire Department Reserve Account to the general fund, and an amendment and appropriation of the same amount to the Speedwell Fire Department for the purchase of replacement cylinders.
Okay, any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, since that time, Ms. Wynn's provided the updated January numbers, and with interest, that amount was $15,911.34. I would request that you all just amend that motion to whatever the current balance is and close out that account so we're not left with a few dollars left in that account.
Mr. Lester, will you amend the committee's motion?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught, will you second it?
I will.
Okay, any other questions?
These new cylinders, are they starting to be standardized?
That is one of the goals that we are trying to work on the standardization of the cylinders. I don't think this goes into that avenue, and that's because they didn't get the full grant to replace the cylinders and the mast and everything. Mr. Horny may know. I think this is just replacing the cylinders to work with the current units they have, because they didn't get the full. If they'd gotten the grant, it would have been different, but as it was, without getting the grant, the only thing that was affordable was to replace the cylinders with the current units.
I believe these are the same cylinder just like we had, except for they're up to date.
Any more questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next item.
Number 5, the last item is upon confirmation of the literary loans, the committee recommends proceeding with a refinance of the remaining debt for the Roy Tree High School, Roy Tree Middle School project at a 2% interest rate for 20 years.
Okay, again, coming from committee, it doesn't need a second. And Mr. Bear, will you please summarize this with explanation?
Yes, back in 2008, as the county and the school board were looking at proceeding with Royal Tree High School, Royal Tree Middle School project, they had applied for literary loan funding, were approved and placed on the literary loan list at that point in time. Following that, funds dried up with recession and everything. Projects were not funded through the literary loan. Wythe County set in, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think number 5 and number 6, or number 4 and number 5 on that list of projects. Funds now, almost 10 years later, have come available in order for us to use literary loan money toward those projects. Projects have been built, but we can use it to refinance the project. The original loan amount that was taken out under SunTrust loan was 2.75%. The value or the interest rate that we can obtain now, or that was promised with the literary loan amount is a 2% loan. So we can refinance this and provide a debt service savings of approximately $175,000, $177,000 a year in debt service savings by refinancing this over the 20-year period of the original. So obviously, we would like to be in position, once we get the documentation and we verbally have been understood that the funds are going to be available, all the other projects have enough funds left over that we'll get the full amount. We would just like to be in place with the approval from the board to proceed with documentation and everything once that is available.
Okay. Hearing that explanation, do anybody have any questions on the board? Hear none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Bob?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Is that all from the Budget Committee? Okay, next, County Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item I have is the, just update. Last week, the State Veterinarian's Office came by and did a review with the animal shelter, unannounced review, and we had a good report from that. No violations. That, and thanks to the staff out there for keeping our shelter in compliance. Second item is the notice from the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Historic Resources. The Carpenter Building across the street from the courthouse, across Spring Street over here, often referred to as the old casket factory. There has been requests to include that into the National Register of Historic Places, and for the town to include adding that into their historic map, or historic district over there. And they have just asked for comments on page 205, as Martha will go forward to it. It shows the existing Wytheville Historic District, and this little area that has been requested to add it into it.
And you can tell that it's not a very big expansion. It just covers the property of the building. And it also was the old hosiery mill. I think it's, what else was in there?
Basically, I think the interest is it does provide a developer with the potential of using historic tax credits on that structure over there.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Bear, I guess you can inform
It
them.
doesn't need any action, just unless if we wanted to send comments or attend the meeting.
Well, I guess, does any board member have any comments about not approving the expansion?
I've got a question. With the courthouse being in the view, because I know the town of Retreat's currently going through this right now with the downtown revitalization project, even though the area across the railroad tracks on Main Street, which the town of Retreat obtained, you know, they're at a stopping point because it's within view of a historical landmark. If they make this building a historical landmark or put it on the registry or whatever they call it, what's the implications for the county since the courthouse property is in view? Or does it matter since it's a government building?
Well, everything still falls under that when you get into the historical side of it. Not just the county owning it does not entirely give it exemptions from that. Part of that's been talked about at Progress Park where we had the house out there and what's been proposed with it and all that. But it should not have an impact on our courthouse complex in that respect. We're already surrounded by that historic district as it is.
Well, I guess my problem is I would hate for 100 years, 50 years from now, the people that are sitting in these seats want to build a new courthouse and they can't do it because it's across the road from that.
There's historic properties within that district in view of the courthouse now. My
Okay.
house falls in it. The house right next door falls in it.
Like I said, I wouldn't, but I know,
And we're currently in the town's historic district.
Yeah,
as
we
it is.
already in the middle of it, or, well, not quite in the middle.
If you can find the middle of them, that map, I'll.
well, the map was a little confusing, that's why.
Things all over the place. Yeah.
I thought I was looking at Whitfield and there's a map telling you how to park in Richmond, so.
Mr. Hale?
County attorney, I believe, can verify this. Just recognition in Virginia does not mean that you won't preserve the building. You just have to record the site, take some pictures of what's there, which right now, I don't think would be very good pictures, but it don't mean you're gonna preserve the building under Virginia law, is that correct?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to look that up.
I believe you're correct.
I would think you were before one there.
Okay. Mr. Barry, you have anything else?
Yes, the other thing I have handed out in front of you, and this was not in for payment with the invoices. We talked about previously about bleacher builders, and you all agreed to award the contract, or the contract to bleacher builders. We issued a purchase order to bleachers builders in the amount of $250,000 for the entirety of 5,000 seats. Included within the purchase order was a 10% mobilization fee, and then payment of the remaining amount upon the bleachers been delivered, all the bleachers been delivered. And as indicated, he was going to provide the storage containers out here for us to hold the bleachers in. And then a final payment of $50,000 would be made upon installation and setup of the bleachers. Bleacher Builders has sent an invoice in, and they have requested a $50,000 payment to start off with. And then the first thing I would request would be that the board's approval of the payment of $50,000, since we issued the purchase order with a 10% payment instead of 20%. And then secondly, he requests $150,000 due within 48 hours upon material delivery. As I sent an email to all of you all about, I would request either one, approval of that and hold it, or more importantly, I'd just like to have an authorization to pay upon that receipt, and that way, when they come in, we can proceed with it as like a prepay and go ahead and issue that check and provide it to him within the 48 hours.
Okay.
I did hear from Mr. Litton, left me a message this morning. He was in contact with the gentleman from Bleacher Builders yesterday, and told him that this was on the agenda for us to proceed, and he was glad to hear that, and was interested in moving forward.
Okay, I entertain a motion that we approve the $50,000 and approve payment upon receipt of the seats for $150,000 as a prepaid. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions?
I'd like Mr. Barry to clarify one thing. These are not really county taxpayer funds. They're in the county's care for safekeeping, but the origin is non-taxpayer money.
Correct. This was a donation of $260-some thousand that was provided to the county.
By the Horsemen's Association. Okay, and no more other questions, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Yeah.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Mr. Barry, you have anything else?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
County Attorney's Report. Mr. Farling?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything to report this time. I would make a request at the end of our meeting to go into closed session to update the new board members on some ongoing litigation that we have with Mr. Lamberson and Keystone and some collections activities.
Okay. Okay, Board of Supervisors, District 1, the Blacklick District. Mr. Vaught?
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I spent my whole weekend answering messages and phone calls and cell calls, home calls, from concerned parents, grandparents, about the future of the school resource officers. I know the sheriff had to leave, apparently he had a meeting. But in doing my research, the next police academy starts sometime 1st of July. And I know this issue is probably going to come up during budget hearings, budget time. But I think we need to have a discussion now and get a consensus of what everybody's feeling is, to give the sheriff's office a heads up of which direction we want to go as a board. Because if we drag our feet till budget hearings, there's no way that we're going to have personnel to put in these schools. I know how I feel, and I personally think it's past due. You know, sheriff sent his letter out to us on the 7th. Unfortunately, a week later, we had the tragedy in Florida. And when I ran for this seat, I said that I probably had different priorities, but I was very honest about it. I said the infrastructure of this county and public safety, whether it be the sheriff's office, fire department, or rescue squad, was my priority. So I think we need to go ahead and have a discussion about which direction the county is going to go so we can get a plan together. And that's my feelings on the subject.
Do you have anything else from Blacklick District?
Nothing at this time.
District 2, West Whiffle.
Nothing to this time.
East Whiffle.
Yes, actually, to touch on what Mr. Vaught was saying, just to catch everyone up to speed, you may have seen it in the newspaper. There might be a couple in the audience that didn't, but Sheriff Dunnigan has had to make the decision to no longer fund the SRO program. He currently, he manages 3 SROs, one for Wythe schools, one for Fort Chisholm, and one for Royal Tree. He's no longer able to do that, and that's due to funding, or actually it's due to loss of deputies. He's losing 3 to 5 positions, which in return is lower tickets. In return from that is lower funds in the police activity fund, which pays the SRO program. A few days later, the town council has discussed providing 3 police officers for Spiller, Scott Middle, and George Wythe High School. That leaves the county schools 7, which would be Sheffey, Jackson, Max Meadows. I count Fort Chisholm Middle and High School as one because they're in one building. Same with Royal Retreat Middle and High. Then you've got Royal Retreat Elementary and Speedwell. And this is something I feel extremely is very important for those schools to all have an SRO, full-time armed deputy that the sheriff manages. So same as Mr. Vaught says, it's very important. I think that we need to talk about funding the SRO program and expanding it to 7 SROs. We've had an average of a school incident this year once every 3 days. So times have changed, and our children need to feel safe at school.
Is that all from the East Whipple?
Yes.
Fort Chisholm District, Mr. Hale.
That is a topic we knew we were going to have to face, and I agree with what both of those folks have said. However, as the people are elected to look after the county, I recommend that you appoint a committee. Certainly, one of Mr. Laws are on the committee to give a timeline that would come back with recommendations. I don't think this is something we need to hash out in public session, because there's a lot of avenues that can save the county money and protect the children in all the schools. I've never understood why a high school student is more valuable than the elementary school student. We ought to have them in all schools. And there'll be people that are capable of working with the students in a civic, social way, not just being an armed person there. Well, that's a difficult job. If you never have a terrorist, if you never, just being in the school halls is a pretty difficult job. But I think we need a committee or a task force, whatever you want to call it, or assign it to some committee that will do the work, come back with a recommendation, and put a time on it. How quickly that has to happen, I agree with him. It don't need to be kicked down the road, we need a recommendation.
Okay, Mr. Byer, I'm going to make a recommendation. You bring this to the Personnel Committee and have a Personnel Committee meet as soon as possible. And this does tie into the budget. You're talking about several more positions adding to the county's budget, which I think it's fair to all taxpayers in the county that how much of a tax increase is going to be on the citizens to pay for this. I know there's several different ways we can do it, and I think the Personnel Committee needs to look at all them and come back with a recommendation to the board and during the budget time. So, Mr. Byers, just as soon as y'all can get a Personnel Committee together and start discussing this and come up with a timeline of when we go look at it first thing during the budget session.
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion? And I can't remember off the top of my head who's on the Personnel Committee, but
That's Mr. Hill, Ms. Ryan, and, Ryan, and Mr. Lester.
can I just make a suggestion that we include somebody from the Sheriff's Office? And there's a lot of, or Mr. Farthing, if Mr. Farthing wants to be involved, there's a lot of code sections that would deal with armed officers on school property.
I think the county attorney can suffice for a representative as far as the code section.
I have one more thing to add. To
Yes.
accommodate Ms. Lawson, Stephen, can we have these work sessions at night so they don't interfere with her work?
Thank you.
And give the committee the ability to bring in somebody as needed for an opinion. If we need an opinion from the sheriff's department, we'll get somebody from the sheriff's department. I don't think we need to add those people to the committee. But if we need to talk for their input, we can certainly ask their suggestions on the different types of approaches we take. There's no effort to exclude the sheriff's department, but I think we got a better solution than the one we're using now.
Yeah, but as far as legal advice, we need our county attorney to give legal advice.
Questions, we don't have to pay him to be at every meeting.
You're getting sticky though, because,
Well, I am picky about things.
I mean, it's getting sticky, and that's because the county, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the county can only fund armed SROs or unarmed security. When you start looking into armed security or looking at an outside resource, I think the school board is the only one who can fund that, and I could be wrong.
Well,
So it might be important for
I
him to be
wasn't
there.
talking about an outside resource. It's all-
You said other
It's all
options.
about us being able to fund it, and I want to do it without raising taxes. I think we can do it without raising taxes. But they ought to be in all schools. It just makes no sense to me that isolated elementary schools obviously take longer to get a road deputy there than does these are up and down 81. They do real well on that speed track out there when they're called. But if they've got to go down 94, or they've got to go 52 to Jackson or Speedwell, unless there's a road deputy in the area, there's nobody there.
Yeah, that's scary.
You have anything else in the Fort Chisholm district?
Other things going along with VDOT as well as they can be in February.
You get, they got Miller's Creek repaired.
Oh, no, that's going to be some months. Remember, that's not a fight, that's a struggle.
Okay, lead mines.
I did have a call yesterday at Mr. Carpenter over the Bird Springs Fire Department building. And Mr. Carpenter informed me that it exploded, busted everything in it. It's molded. That's been thrown in the side ever since I've been on this board of supervisors, and that's 8 going on 9 years. Let's do something with that. We've had it in here 5 or 6 times. But it was given to that club down in 1960 something. Let's give it back to them. We don't need it. Ms. Carter told me that the school board lady, who was David's mama, his manly, had said they could use that building at night for educational purposes for senior citizens. Why don't we check with the school board, see if they want that building back?
We can do that. Are they still classified, they still have their nonprofit status?
That is, what is the name of that, the garden club?
Do they have a nonprofit status?
The school board gave it to them in 1960 something. I don't know how in the world that the school board wound back up with it, but they did. They give it to the board of supervisors, and the board of supervisors said let them have a lease on it.
Yeah, I don't think the deed says it's county property though.
Yeah, it went to the school board, and then the school board declared it surplus and conveyed it back to the county 20 years ago or so. I don't remember the dates on it, but yeah.
The fire department has no more use for that building. I don't think Wythe County has any use for it either.
You talking about the one in front of the Carpenter store?
Where the old school is.
It's a home improvement club that, and we can pull the records on it, and Scott can review it again, but basically there was an agreement at the point in time for as long as it was used for purposes, they had use of it, and then whether they stopped existing, stopped sending information to the school board, I don't know, but in history, the school board ended up back with the property and then conveyed that property to the county. It has that building on it, it has the fire department building on it. The county has not had any activity with that. They continue to let the Barron Springs Home Improvement Club, and you're right, Coy, there was another name of the club, and I can't remember if Barron Springs Home Improvement Club is the right name of the club that's there now or what it is. The fire department building has sat there the entire time. the fire department did use that old building for a while. Of course, the county built them a new building. They did have a couple members renting it at one time, just paying an electricity bill on it just to store a boat or something like that in it. I don't know that anything's in it right now.
Well, did somebody keep the heat in that building until lately?
Probably, I don't know how long ago. There wasn't one time they were keeping materials in there, or like boats or something. I assume they had heat. So the water that's on the well there serves both the buildings.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we check with the school board and see if they're interested in having something in that building. To get somebody in it to take care of it somewhere or other.
We can do that.
Are you talking about the old school building, or are you talking about?
I'm talking about the firehouse.
Cinder Rock Firehouse.
Yeah.
What about the building in front of it, the community center, or?
They still use it, what the name of that home improvement or home something like that. They still use it, they have lots of things in it, flea market, dinners. I see the wood stacked up on the porch that somebody built a fire in there. And I'm not sure if it's got water inside it. It might have in the kitchen part. It doesn't have a bathroom, does it?
I don't know. I do know it did have water because they had a question about the water a couple of years ago on fire department turning on a valve to provide them the water on that side. So I don't know if it's bathroom or not.
Well, there's a well right there beside it. Of course, the county water goes right by it now. But I don't think that's been hooked up. Are they paying the bill on that?
They were paying the non-user bill on it. I know they were getting billed the non-user. I said they were paying it. I haven't looked at it recently. But I believe you're correct. I don't think either one of the buildings ever connected.
Is anybody paying it on the fire department?
I have to look and see. But we'll talk to the school board about any interest in using that Barron Springs Fire Department building, and then budget on buildings and grounds to look at a recommendation of how we proceed.
And has the fire department got all that stuff out of the old Cinder Rock? Is there anything they got left in there? There used to be a
I
boat.
don't think there's anything in there now. I don't think the fire department's had anything in there in several years. I think it's been letting somebody else, some of the members use it. And evidently they pulled the stuff out every time they dig off. Then after everything freezes, the fire department called and said, we don't have no use for it anymore. I wouldn't either.
I know as cold as it's been this past winter, everything's froze and busted in it. Probably if there's water, it looked like somebody had turned the water off or drained the pipes, but,
Yeah, that was anything to do.
yep. You have anything else, Mr.
No,
McRoberts?
I finished that.
Speeble District, Mr. Horny?
I don't have anything at this time.
I do have something.
Yes.
I do want to thank the Sheriff's Department for picking up 238 tires over the mountain down there.
300 and so.
Off the fall. Ridiculous.
I do too, and hopefully we can get some cameras up in them areas and catch these people that's throwing all this litter out.
When I got that email, I thought that was a misprint. And of course now, Doug Tuck told both of us there's a lot of tires, and apparently he was telling the truth.
Okay, I did have one call yesterday from Mr. Krieger from Crockett. He wanted me to bring up the issue of the noise ordinance. He didn't have any concern with the noise ordinance except for people out target practicing. And he wanted to see if we'd revisit that, and I haven't had a chance to really go back and actually read the noise ordinance as far as what the noise ordinance actually really says. I don't think it specifies shooting, target practicing, or whatever out in the county, but I don't think we intended it at any time to stop people during the daytime out, just target shooting. I don't think that was our intent. It was mostly for other things, people playing loud radios and just annoying people, just to be ignoring them. Mr. Burr, will you send that to bring that up in let's see, Personnel Committee, and have them to review that ordinance and see if we need to amend it. And that's all I have. Do you have anybody have anything else under reports or old business? If not, we'll move into new business. We have the consent calendar. Entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Motion to approve the consent calendar is presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions about the consent calendar? Hear none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny? The chair votes aye. Raper Ridge storage tank. Mr. Byer?
Yeah, I've been asking Mr. Vaughn to get everything finalized so we can have everything ready to close out our loan with the rural development. And these are two resolutions that he sent to me that the board needs to adopt in order to proceed with us moving forward towards that loan closing. So there are two new members. Well, there's a Raper Ridge is an area just north of Austinsville that there's an existing water tank on. This provides a second water tank, which provides additional storage capacity for the New River Regional Water Authority to serve both Wythe and Carroll counties from that. We've already had discussions about this and the resolution on the loan. This, the debt service on this is being paid by the New River Regional Water Authority on this tank, but since the county owns the property, we will be the ones proceeding with obtaining the loan and the construction through rural development.
I entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make a motion, we approve both these resolutions, and y'all need authority to sign them.
The resolution gives the authority to assign.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions? Okay, hear none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Bob?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next item, Crossroad Regional Industrial Facility audit.
Mr. Chairman, it was a clean audit that does show them with some funds, and part of that reason is because the dividend was not declared last year because of the potential for a refund that would be due to one of the projects. However, that was the project that Mr. Corbin Stone helped the Commissioner of Revenue's office with, and in the end deemed that a refund was not due to that company for their machinery and tools tax, and in fact, an additional assessment went to that company. So, audit is fine as a point of information. The Crossroads Regional Industrial Authority met last week. They have declared dividends out of that 2016 amount that had come in, and 2017 amount that had come in, and those checks have been cut and dispersed to all three localities. And there will be a meeting later again this year to declare a dividend for the 2018 proceeds as well.
Okay, I entertain a motion to accept the audit report.
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next item is our closed session. Mr. Lester, you want to make a motion to go into closed session under, you have it there.
Make a motion that we go into closed session under section 2.2, 3712,
3711.
3711. A7, consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation. And that's for, you mentioned the Lamberton, Keystone, and collections.
I have a second to the motion.
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are now in closed session.
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are now out of closed session. Will you please read the certification, Mr. Lester?
Whereas the Wythe County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2, 3711,
I think it's 3712.
this one,
Yeah.
it says 3712.
Yeah, 3712 on that one.
Of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors that such a meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wythe County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors.
I have a second on the certification of the resolution.
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Hear none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the chair votes aye. Before we recess and go to the school board office at 12 o'clock, and from my understanding, they may have some snacks.
They will have lunch available for us.
They will have lunch available there at the school board office.
No, we're going to meet at George Wythe High School.
Oh, George Wythe High School?
I think we're eating in the library, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
They'll meet
okay.
at the George Wythe High School.
For that being said, does anybody have anything else they want to bring up for the board? We have an hour. But we can recess and meet at the George Wythe High School in the library at 12 o'clock. And we are in recess.